A little orphan girl wandering the desert, trading each sweep of a ranch's front steps for a bite to eat. No one could have guessed that one small act would change her life forever. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to leave a comment below, and subscribe to the channel for more stories just like this. And stick around, because the next part will move you even deeper. The high noon sun scorched down on the dusty plains, turning the land into a shimmering mirror of heat waves and parched soil. Ellie walked barefoot along the dry trail, her small feet already toughened from months of wandering under the relentless western sky. At just 8 years old, she'd learned that survival often came from the quiet, unnoticed things. The pale blue dress she wore, once pretty, now hung in tatters around her knees, its hem frayed, stained with earth that no amount of scrubbing could erase, and its color bleached by months beneath the cruel sun. Her tangled, dull black hair framed a thin, sun-worn face, but her eyes still held that spark and unwavering determination that many grown folks had long lost. Ellie had developed a routine, one she followed like clockwork. She'd arrive at ranches before sunrise when the household was still asleep and quietly begin tidying the front area. She'd sweep away the layer of overnight dust, organize tools left out, and sometimes even remove small rocks from the path. She never asked for anything, just waited silently, hoping her effort would speak for itself. Some ranchers handed her cold biscuits or a cup of water in return, while others chased her off with loud voices and stern threats. But Ellie had grown skilled at reading houses. Those with flower pots on the windowsills usually belonged to kinder souls. The ones with tightly shut doors seldom had warmth to offer. One morning, the Heaven Ranch came into view, rising out of the heat like a mirage. It was bigger than the others she'd seen, with thick adobe walls, standing tall like a fortress in the desert. Iron bars guarded the windows, and in the courtyard, she caught a glimpse of a shockingly green garden, thriving in defiance of the dry wasteland around it. The main entrance stood between two stone columns, a heavy wooden door scarred by years of sandstorms, sun, and wind. Ellie immediately noticed how the place needed care. Dried leaves clustered in corners, dust covered the steps, and scattered stones blocked the path. Without a moment's hesitation, she dropped to her knees and got to work. With small, practiced hands, she gathered the brittle leaves into neat piles, then slowly moved on to scrub the stone steps one by one. Her movements were patient, deliberate, like someone who had learned to treasure every bit of progress. As she worked, Ellie softly sang a lullaby her mother used to hum before the sickness took her. The tune was sorrowful but lovely, about birds finding their way back home, and her young voice floated through the morning air like a prayer. From beyond the barn, Charles Harper was out early inspecting his cattle when he heard the quiet song drifting across the yard. He paused, brow furrowed, trying to find where the sound was coming from. Following the melody, he stepped toward the front of his ranch, then froze. There, kneeling on his front steps, was a little girl with wild hair and threadbare clothes, scrubbing the stones with reverent care. Each movement was careful, intentional, almost as if she believed it sacred. He stood quietly, watching her nudge every leaf aside with such tenderness, how she paused to clean even the tiniest crevice in the stone. Something about the scene stirred something deep within him, not just the work itself, but the way she did it. No urgency, no sense of needing praise. She was doing it because somehow she believed it mattered. After she finished, Ellie rose slowly to her feet. She brushed the dust from her palms and stepped back, taking a moment to admire her work. The stone steps now gleamed under the early sun, and the entrance path was spotless. A small but genuine smile curved her lips, softening her face completely. Charles finally approached his boots, striking against the stone. Ellie looked up, and for a brief second their eyes met. There was no fear in her gaze, only a quiet readiness. "What's your name, little one?" Charles asked, his voice unintentionally gentle. "Ellie, sir," she replied with a polite little dip of her head that might have been charming if not for the visible signs of hunger on her face. "Why?" he asked, puzzled. "Why'd you clean my steps, Ellie?" She looked at him earnestly, taking the question seriously. "Because they were dirty, sir. And why does that matter? Because I like it when things look nice." Charles felt a stirring in his chest, a feeling he hadn't known in a long, long while. "Are you hungry?" he asked. Ellie gave a slight nod. "I'm always hungry, sir." At that moment, Maria Harper stepped onto the porch, drawn by the sound of voices. When she saw the girl, her expression softened immediately. Maria had once been a mother, and though many years had passed since they'd lost their daughter to the fever, the instinct hadn't left her. "Charles, who is this little girl?" Maria asked softly, stepping closer with deliberate care. "Her name's Ellie. She's been out front, cleaning our steps." Maria glanced at the entrance, taking in the spotless path, then turned her gaze to the child. Ellie stood tall, but there was a fragile stillness about her, like a bird, unsure whether to fly or stay grounded. "When was the last time?" Maria paused, then asked gently, "You had something warm to eat?" Ellie hesitated, trying to remember. "I'm not sure, ma'am." Maria and Charles exchanged a glance that said more than words ever could. In that quiet second, they both knew something was shifting inside them. "Come on, sweetheart," Maria said, reaching out her hand. "Let's get you something to eat." Ellie looked at the offered hand with suspicion. Life had taught her to be careful not to trust too easily. But there was something in the woman's eyes, a softness, a familiarity that stirred memories of her own mother. Slowly, cautiously, Ellie placed her small hand in Maria's. The grip was gentle, but sure, like a silent promise passed between two souls who'd found each other at the right moment. As they stepped toward the ranch house, Ellie glanced back at the freshly swept steps. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she'd done something that mattered. What she didn't know was that this simple act, this quiet effort, was the beginning of something that would alter her life forever. The desert still stretched endlessly around them, silent and wild, but inside the adobe walls of the Heaven Ranch, something new had started to take root. Inside the kitchen, the scent of cinnamon and fresh dough filled the air as Ellie stepped in shyly, her eyes adjusting to the dim light after the blinding sun outside. The thick adobe walls kept the space cool, and Ellie had never been in a place that felt so solid, so safe. Maria guided her to a wooden chair near the center table, where a beam of sunlight cast a golden rectangle across the worn surface. "Sit here, honey," Maria said, the affectionate term slipping from her lips as naturally as breathing. It had been years since she'd had someone to say it to. Ellie perched on the edge of the chair, ready to spring up if needed. Her eyes wandered across the room, soaking in every detail: the copper pots hanging from iron hooks, bundles of dried herbs tied with string, the cast iron griddle resting on the stovetop. It felt like she had stepped into another world, a different life. "How long have you been on your own?" Maria asked while lighting the fire beneath the stove, her movements efficient but tender. Ellie thought for a moment. Since my mama got sick. It's been many moons. Maria swallowed hard, her throat tightening. The girl had learned to count time by the moon, like the old ones used to. And your father, I never met him. Mama said he was a good man, but he had to go far away. Ellie spoke with the calm acceptance of someone who had made peace with loss. As Maria worked dough into fresh tortillas, Charles appeared in the doorway, his tall frame filling the entrance. His presence was solid, but there was a kindness in his expression. "Ellie, where are you from?" "From a lot of places, sir." She gestured vaguely to the south. "Mama told me to walk toward where the sun comes up. Said I'd find good folks eventually." Charles stepped inside and took the chair across from her. "Your mama was a wise woman." "Yes, sir, she knew many things. She taught me to read the stars, find water in dry land, and know when someone has a good heart." Ellie met his gaze directly. "You two are good people." Maria turned from the stove, her eyes glistening with tears. "How can you be so sure?" she asked softly. "Because you have flowers in your windows. Because when the man spoke to me, he didn't yell first. And because you're feeding me without asking anything in return." Her logic was as simple as it was heartbreaking. Charles cleared his throat, emotions knotting in his chest. "Ellie, do you have anywhere else to go?" She shook her head honestly. "No, sir. But I can take care of myself. I can clean, find food, and I don't bother nobody." "That's no way for a child to live," Maria whispered, setting a steaming plate down in front of Ellie. Fresh tortillas, refried beans, and scrambled eggs. The smell hit Ellie's senses hard, and her stomach growled loudly in response. She looked at the plate like it was something sacred. "All this is for me." "Of course, honey. Eat as much as you want." With trembling hands, Ellie picked up a tortilla. Her first bite was tiny, hesitant, almost like she was afraid it might disappear. But the moment the warm food hit her tongue, something shifted. The hunger, raw, real, and constant, took over, and she began to eat with the urgency of someone who had gone without for too long. Maria and Charles watched her in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. It had been 3 years since they'd lost their daughter Carmen to a fever no doctor could cure. Carmen had been the same age as Ellie when she passed, and her absence had left a void that no amount of time had been able to fill. Ellie, Charles said after a quiet moment, "Would you like to stay here for a while? We've got a room that hasn't been used in years, and we could always use an extra set of hands on the ranch." Ellie stopped chewing, her wide eyes looking between the two of them. "I can stay," she asked, unsure. "If you'd like to," Maria replied, her voice barely more than a whisper. Ellie nodded quickly, then paused. "But I'd have to work. I can't just be here doing nothing." Charles chuckled, a real, honest smile lighting his face for the first time in what felt like forever. "Oh, don't worry about that. There's more than enough work around here. This place keeps us on our toes every day. Can I keep cleaning the front steps? I like it when they look nice." "You can clean anything you want," Maria said with a soft laugh. Once Ellie finished eating, she wiped her mouth carefully with the napkin Maria had set beside her plate. "Can I see the room?" she asked quietly. "Of course," Maria replied, getting up right away. They walked down a cool hallway, the adobe walls adorned with faded family photographs and a few framed pictures of saints. Ellie looked around silently, taking in every little detail of what was quickly becoming her new world. Maria stopped at a door painted soft sky blue. "This is it. This is your room." She pushed the door open slowly. The room was small but warm and welcoming. A single bed with a straw-stuffed mattress, a simple wooden table, and a window that overlooked the inner garden. The walls were painted a gentle yellow, and though the room had been unused for years, Maria had kept it clean and ready. Ellie stepped in like she was entering sacred ground. She reached out and gently touched the bed. "This bed is for me. Yes, honey, the whole thing all yours." Ellie sat on the edge of the mattress, bouncing lightly as if testing whether it was real. "I've never had a bed that was just mine." Maria turned away, wiping her eyes before the girl could see. "You like it? It's the nicest thing I've ever seen." That night, after Ellie had bathed and changed into one of Charles's old shirts that now served as her nightgown, Maria and Charles sat on the front porch, gazing up at the stars blanketing the desert sky. "Do you think we're doing the right thing?" Maria asked softly. Charles took her hand. "That little girl didn't show up here by accident, Maria. She came at just the right time for us and for herself. She reminds me so much of Carmen when she smiles," Maria whispered. "She does." Charles agreed gently. "But she's not Carmen. She's Ellie, and she deserves to be loved for exactly who she is." Maria squeezed her husband's hand. "Tomorrow I'll teach her to work in the garden. I always wanted to share that with someone. And I'll show her the horses," Charles added. She looked like she'd seen magic when she spotted them. In her new room, Ellie lay curled up in bed, staring through the window at the same stars Maria and Charles were watching. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt safe, truly safe. Her mother had told her that one day she'd find a place that felt like home, and now she had. As she drifted off to sleep, Ellie whispered a small prayer of thanks toward the starry sky. Tomorrow would be the start of her new life. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew she wouldn't have to face it alone. In the stillness of that desert night, 3 hearts, each marked by loss, began to heal. By the time the first golden rays of sun spilled over the horizon, Ellie was already awake, sitting on the edge of her new bed, watching the garden bathed in morning light. She'd slept more soundly than she had in months, but her survival instincts were hard to shake. For so long, waking early had meant the difference between eating and going hungry. She dressed quietly in the clean clothes Maria had laid out for her the night before, a simple blue cotton skirt and a loose white blouse that, though a bit big, made her feel like an entirely different person. She combed her hair with a wooden brush she found on the table, marveling at how smooth it felt now that it was clean. Ellie stepped out into the hall on silent feet, careful not to disturb anyone. But as she reached the kitchen, she found Maria already there, busy at the stove. The smell of fresh coffee drifted through the air. "Good morning, sweetheart," Maria said, turning with a warm smile. "Did you sleep well?" Ellie nodded, stepping closer, her voice shy but steady. "Yes, ma'am. The bed's really comfortable. Can I help you with something?" "Of course you can. Do you know how to make tortillas?" Maria asked with a warm smile. "My mama taught me, but it's been a long time since I made any," Ellie replied quietly. Maria motioned her closer to the griddle. "Hands don't forget, sweetheart. Come here, I'll show you how we make tortillas here on the Heaven Ranch." For the next hour, Ellie stood side by side with Maria, her small hands slowly rediscovering the rhythm of kneading dough, shaping it into perfect circles, and flipping the tortillas at just the right moment. Maria corrected her, gently guiding her movements with the kind of patience that only came from deep love. "My mama used to make the best tortillas in the whole world," Ellie said as she worked. "She always said the secret was singing to them while you cooked." "What did she sing?" Maria asked. Ellie began to hum a soft tune, an old song about cornfields dancing in the sunlight. Her voice, though still childlike, carried a haunting beauty that made Maria pause, her heart catching in her chest. "Your mama sings beautifully," Maria murmured without realizing she'd used the present tense. Ellie smiled faintly. She used to say music made food taste better. Charles stepped into the kitchen just as Ellie finished her first perfectly round tortilla. "Well, it smells like home in here already." Ellie blushed at the compliment. "Is it really okay, sir?" "It's perfect," he replied. "Would you like to come with me after breakfast? I want to show you the horses." Ellie's eyes sparkled. "Really, I won't scare them. Horses are great judges of character," Charles said. "If they accept you, we'll know you truly belong here." After breakfast, Charles led Ellie out to the stables. The scent of fresh hay and leather filled the air, and Ellie could hear the soft snorts and stomps of the animals inside. There were 5 horses, 3 sturdy workhorses, and 2 elegant mares. "This here's Thunder," Charles said, pointing to a chestnut gelding with white patches. "He's the gentlest one of the bunch. Go ahead, say hello." Ellie walked toward the horse, slowly extending her hand the way she'd seen grown-ups do. Thunder sniffed her palm carefully before nudging it with his nose. Ellie laughed with surprise and delight. "He likes me." "Looks like it." Charles nodded. Horses can tell when someone's got a kind heart. Charles showed her how to groom Thunder, how to feed him properly, and how to keep his stall clean. Ellie soaked up every detail, asking thoughtful questions that surprised Charles with their insight. "Why do his ears keep twitching like that?" she asked while brushing his side. "He's listening to everything around him," Charles explained. "Horses can hear a lot better than we can, like when I had to listen for bad people." Charles paused, reminded of the hard life Ellie had known. "Exactly. But here you don't have to worry about that anymore." Ellie nodded, though her eyes still flicked toward the barn door now and then, a habit that wouldn't disappear overnight. Meanwhile, Maria had begun adding touches to Ellie's room to make it feel more like home. She hung soft white curtains over the window, laid a woven rug beside the bed, and placed a small vase of fresh wildflowers on the nightstand. When Ellie returned from the stables and saw the changes, she stopped in the doorway, completely speechless. "Do you like it?" Maria asked nervously. Ellie stepped inside, slowly touching each new item with reverence. "It's like something out of a storybook. Every little girl deserves a beautiful room." Ellie leaned toward the flowers, breathing in their scent. "Can I take care of these?" "Of course. And if you'd like tomorrow, I can teach you how to plant your own flowers in the garden." That afternoon, Ellie insisted on cleaning the front steps again. But this time, Maria and Charles stood nearby, watching her carefully and quietly noticing the care she poured into every sweep and movement. "Why is it so important to you that everything's clean?" Maria asked. Ellie paused, thinking. "My mama used to say, when we take care of things, they take care of us. And when something looks nice, it makes people feel happy. Your mama was a wise woman." "Yes, she taught me many important things." Charles stepped closer. "Ellie, would you like to learn how to read and write better?" Ellie's eyes widened. "I can learn. Of course. Every child should be able to read and write, not just the rich ones," Maria said as she took Ellie's hand. "You're a smart little girl. You deserve that chance." That evening after supper, Charles brought out a few old books and sat at the kitchen table with Ellie. She already knew some letters, but Charles quickly realized how sharp her mind was and how fast she could learn. "What's this word here?" Charles asked, pointing. Ellie squinted, concentrating. "Home. Perfect. And this one family." Charles smiled wide. "Exactly right." Ellie traced the word family with her fingertip. "Are we a family now?" she asked quietly. The question hung in the air like a feather. Maria and Charles looked at each other, feeling the weight and the hope in Ellie's voice. "If you want to be," Maria said gently, "then yes, we are a family." Ellie nodded slowly, seriously. "I want that. I want to be part of your family." Charles placed his large hand gently over Ellie's small one. "Then it's settled. From now on, you're our daughter, Ellie Herrera." For the first time since she'd arrived, Ellie began to cry, not out of sadness or fear, but from a deep, overwhelming sense of relief. Maria wrapped her in a warm embrace, and Ellie let herself sink into it, finally feeling the comfort of a mother's arms. "I really get to stay," she whispered. "For as long as you want," Charles said, his voice thick with emotion. That night, Ellie climbed into her small bed, not as a guest passing through, but as a daughter. She had found something she once thought might not exist for her, a true home, a family who loved her exactly as she was. In the hush of the desert night, 3 hearts had become one, bound by something deeper than blood, a chosen kind of love, the kind that grows when souls recognize each other and decide to walk side by side through life. 6 months had passed since Ellie became Ellie Herrera, and the Heaven Ranch had blossomed in ways no one could have foreseen. Maria's garden had never looked more alive, now tended with 4 hands instead of 2. The horses gleamed under Ellie's devoted care, her bond with them growing stronger each day. Even the ranch entrance had become a point of pride, so tidy and inviting that neighboring ranchers came just to admire it. But like any story of growth, it hadn't all been easy. In the first weeks, Ellie was haunted by nightmares. She'd wake up crying for her mother or shouting about the men who had chased her during her long journey. On those nights, Maria would sit beside her bed, gently singing lullabies until Ellie drifted back to sleep. Charles had reinforced the doors and windows, not because it was necessary, but because Ellie needed to feel safe. Slowly, the nightmares faded, replaced by dreams of blooming flowers and galloping horses, warm tortillas, and a mother's comforting arms. Ellie began to gain weight, her cheeks fuller, her hair glossy with health. But more than that, she had started to laugh, real bright laughter that filled the house and made Maria and Charles smile without realizing it. Still, the ghosts of the past didn't all belong to Ellie. One crisp October morning, while she and Maria were preserving peaches in the kitchen, an unexpected visitor arrived, Don Fernando Morales. Charles's brother had come all the way from Santa Fe with news that would upend everything. Charles Fernando said, settling heavily onto the porch, "I need a word." Ellie, sweeping near the doorway, instinctively faded into the background. She'd learned to disappear when grown-ups spoke about serious things, an old habit from her time on the road. "What's going on?" Brother Charles asked, handing him a glass of cold water. "It's about the ranch and the girl." Ellie froze, her heartbeat suddenly pounding in her ears. "What about Ellie?" Charles asked, his voice tightening. Fernando took a long breath. "Some people came asking about her. Folks from town. They say she's an orphan who needs to be placed in a proper home, a government facility. They claim it's not legal for a couple without formal adoption papers to be keeping her." Ellie's world tilted beneath her. She'd heard stories about those places, cold, crowded buildings where children vanished into the masses, unloved and unseen. "Who are these people?" Charles asked, his voice sharp now. "A government man and a woman who says she's a social worker. They're coming tomorrow to take her." The broom slipped from Ellie's hands with a loud clatter. Both men turned and saw her standing there, her eyes wide with panic. Ellie Charles started, but she was already running. She bolted straight for the stables to Thunder, the only place she'd ever felt completely safe. Curling up in the farthest corner of the stall, she hugged her knees to her chest as tears streamed down her cheeks. "I don't want to go," she whispered to the big horse, who stepped closer and gently nudged her shoulder with his nose. "I don't want to go to an orphanage." Maria found her there an hour later, still quietly crying. "My sweet girl," Maria said, lowering herself onto the straw beside her. "You heard what we said." Ellie nodded without looking up. "I'm scared. I don't want to leave. I want to stay with you and Mr. Charles. I want to be your daughter." Maria felt her heart splinter. "And we want you to stay. You are our daughter, Ellie. That's never going to change." "But are they going to take me anyway?" Maria didn't answer right away, and in that silence, Ellie understood more than words could say. That night, the Herrera family gathered in the kitchen. Ellie sat between Maria and Charles, her small hands swallowed up in theirs. Ellie Charles began gently, "You need to know whatever happens, we're going to fight for you. We're not letting anyone take you without doing everything we can to stop it." "But what if you can't win?" Ellie whispered. Maria squeezed her hand. "There's something we've never told you, honey. Before you came, we had a daughter." Ellie looked up in surprise. It was the first time she'd heard the name. Her name was Carmen. Maria continued, tears streaking down her face. "She got sick when she was your age. The doctors couldn't save her. After she passed, we didn't think we could ever love another little girl like that again." Ellie looked straight at them, her voice soft but filled with knowing. "But I'm not Carmen, am I?" "No, sweetheart," Maria said, her voice shaking. "You're Ellie, and we love you for you, not because we're trying to replace someone else." That night, Ellie went to bed, not as a guest passing through, but as a daughter, fully, truly, and permanently. She had found something she once believed didn't exist for someone like her: a real home, a family who loved her simply for being herself. In the stillness of the desert, 3 hearts had become one, tied together not by blood, but by something far more powerful. Chosen love, the kind born when souls recognize each other and decide to walk through life hand in hand. Carlos cleared his throat. "Ellie, tomorrow some people are coming. They're going to try and convince you that you'd be better off somewhere else. But no matter what they say, I want you to remember one thing: you belong here. You're our daughter, and that will never change." Ellie nodded, a fire building quietly in her chest. "What can I do to help?" "Just be yourself," Maria said softly. "Let them see who you really are." The next morning, Ellie rose before the first light touched the sky. She dressed in the pale blue dress Maria had sewn for her, combed her hair neatly, and made sure her boots were clean. If they were going to judge her, she'd make sure they saw the very best of her. She stood at the front gate, the same one she had swept the morning her life changed. A man and a woman approached. The man was older, wearing a worn gray suit and a serious expression. The woman beside him was stern-faced, dressed in drab gray, her mouth drawn into a permanent line of disapproval. "You must be Ellie," the woman said, eyeing her from head to toe. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Ellie Herrera. According to our records, your name is Ellie Morales," the woman corrected. "Herrera isn't your real last name." Ellie lifted her chin. "Herrera is my last name, because this is my family." The man stepped forward. "We're here to take you to a place where you'll be with children like yourself. Somewhere you'll get a proper education and professional care." "I am getting an education," Ellie replied, her voice firm. Mr. Charles teaches me reading and writing, and I'm already cared for. Miss Maria looks after me better than anyone ever has. The woman's brow furrowed. It's inappropriate for a child like you to be living with strangers. At the orphanage, you'll be among your own kind. My own kind. Ellie blinked. Other orphans, the woman explained flatly. Something lit in Ellie's eyes. I'm not an orphan, she said. I have parents right here. At that moment, Maria and Charles stepped outside. Maria held a tray with cold lemonade and fresh-baked cookies, her expression gracious but tense. Welcome to our home, she said, her voice polite but tight. The social worker waved the offering away. Mrs. Herrera, you have no legal right to keep this child here. She needs to be placed in an appropriate institution. Appropriate for what Charles asked, his voice steady but hard. For her education, her future, her place in society, the woman snapped. Ellie stepped forward, her voice clear. And what is my place in society? Excuse me, the woman replied, startled. You said I need to find my place in society. So what is it? The social worker shifted uncomfortably. Well, children like you. Children without families. But I do have a family, Ellie interrupted. I have a father who teaches me about horses and reads me stories. I have a mother who teaches me to cook and grow flowers. I have a home where I'm loved. That isn't real, the woman said sharply. That's temporary. At the orphanage, you'll learn practical skills like sewing and cleaning that'll serve you when you're older. Ellie gave a small smile, the same kind of quiet confidence her birth mother once carried. I already know how to clean. I clean better than most grown-ups. But I'm also learning things that matter more, like what the woman challenged. I'm learning that love isn't just about blood. I'm learning that families are built when people choose to love each other. I'm learning that I matter not because of what I can do, but because of who I am. The government official who'd stayed mostly quiet stepped forward. You'll have formal schooling at the orphanage, 3 meals a day, and a structured future. Ellie looked him in the eyes. Sir, do you have a family? Yes, he said after a pause. A wife and 2 kids. Do you love them? Of course. And do they love you? Yes. Then you know what love feels like. I do too. My parents love me. Why would you want to take that away from me? The man didn't answer right away, clearly shaken by the question. Ellie went on, her voice stronger now. You say you want to give me a future, but I already have one. I'm going to learn everything I can take care of my parents when they're old, and one day I'll teach my own children that love is the most important thing in the world. The social worker's tone turned harsh. This is absurd. Girl, gather your things. We're leaving now. No. The word rang through the ranch yard like a bell, sharp and unshakable. What did you say? The woman barked. I said no. I'm not going with you. You don't have a choice. Ellie turned to look at Maria and Charles, who watched her with pride and fear. She faced the officials again. There's always a choice, she said. My first mama taught me that. And I choose to stay. I choose my family. Just then, the sound of hooves echoed across the dirt road. Don Fernando was returning, but he wasn't alone. With him rode 3 men, Father Joseph, the local priest, Mayor Miguel, and Judge Robert, the town's justice of the peace. What's the meaning of this? The government official demanded. Don Fernando dismounted, offering a calm smile. It means this child has more people standing with her than you expected. Father Joseph stepped forward and placed a gentle hand on Ellie's shoulder. Ellie, my child, he asked softly, are you all right? Yes, Father, Ellie said softly. But these people want to take me away from my family. The priest turned to the officials. I've known this girl since the day she arrived. I've watched her grow and thrive under the care of Charles and Maria. I've seen her bring light back into a home that had long been weighed down by grief. By what right do you come here to tear that apart? The mayor gave a solemn nod. This child is one of us now. The Herreras are respected members of this community, and Ellie is one of our daughters. But it was Judge Robert, the town's justice of the peace, who spoke the words that changed everything. He pulled a few papers from his satchel and looked up. I've reviewed the official records, he said calmly, and I found something unusual. According to the documents filed 6 months ago, Ellie Morales was declared deceased after disappearing in the desert. The social worker's expression tightened. What are you saying? I'm saying that legally Ellie Morales no longer exists. The girl standing here is Ellie Herrera, adopted daughter of Charles and Maria Herrera. And as judge of this territory, I have the authority to make that adoption official right here, right now. Ellie felt the world pause around her. Really, really, sweetheart, the judge confirmed. If your parents agree, I can make it all legal this very moment. Charles and Maria didn't hesitate. They stepped forward together, speaking as one. Yes. Yes, we want to adopt her. Officially. Ellie rushed into their arms, and the three of them held each other tightly as the judge began preparing the paperwork. Less than an hour later, it was done. Ellie Herrera was no longer just a name spoken in love. It was her name on paper, real, recognized, and protected by law. The government officials had no choice but to leave defeated not by loopholes or tricks, but by the unshakable will of an 8-year-old girl and the undeniable love of the people who stood with her. That night, Ellie sat on the porch beside her parents, looking up at the stars that stretched endlessly over the desert sky. She had faced the hardest trial of her new life, and she had come out stronger. Papa, she asked, using the word she could now say freely. Yes, sweet girl. Are you sure no one will ever take me away again? Charles wrapped his arm tighter around her. Never, Ellie. You're our daughter now forever. Ellie smiled, her heart full of a peace she had never known before. She had found her place in the world, and no one could take it from her. 3 years passed since that day, and the Heaven Ranch had changed completely. Not just in how it looked, though. Ellie's love for beauty and order had left its mark on every inch of it, but in the spirit that filled the air. Ellie, now 11, had grown tall and strong. Her black hair fell in soft waves to her shoulders, and her eyes held a light earned from facing storms and standing tall through them. She was no longer the timid child who had once stood barefoot at the ranch gate. She was a confident young girl who knew exactly who she was and where she belonged. That morning began like many others, with Ellie rising before dawn to care for the horses. But this day was different. It marked the anniversary of her arrival at the ranch. No one said it aloud, but everyone remembered. Morning thunder, she whispered, brushing the nose of her favorite horse. Do you know what today is? Thunder gave a soft whinny as if he did. Ellie had formed a bond so deep with the horses that sometimes it seemed they truly understood her. As she groomed Thunder, she thought back to the girl she had been arriving with, nothing but the clothes on her back and a fierce will to survive. Now she had a family who loved her, a real education that prepared her for the future, and a home she had helped build with her own 2 hands. Elena Maria's voice called from the house. Breakfast is ready. Ellie gave Thunder one last pat and ran toward the house, her feet light on the land she had grown to love. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon and fresh coffee, and Maria was setting down a plate of warm tortillas. Morning, Mama Ellie said, kissing her mother's cheek. Morning, mija. How are the horses? They're all doing great. Thunder seems extra happy today. Charles walked into the kitchen, the thud of his boots echoing off the stone floor. Good morning, family. Ellie, any special plans for today? Ellie smiled. I thought we could work on the new garden. The seeds we planted last week are starting to sprout. Maria and Charles exchanged a quiet, meaningful glance. Ellie had turned the dusty edges of the ranch into something vibrant with gardens that seemed to bloom against all odds. But more than that, she had brought joy back to a place that had once felt empty. After breakfast, Ellie made her way to her most treasured project, a memorial garden she had spent months designing. It was her way of honoring both her birth mother and Carmen, the sister she had never met, but always felt close to. The garden was tucked away in a peaceful corner of the ranch, shaded by a tall mesquite tree that stood like a silent guardian. Ellie had worked the soil with her own hands, planting flowers and arranging stones to create a space where two memories could live side by side in peace. Need a hand? Maria asked gently as she walked up carrying a watering can filled with fresh, cool water. Yes, please. I think the roses are ready to be moved, Ellie said, her hands gently cupping the fragile roots as she prepared the transplant. Maria watched her daughter closely, noticing the care she gave to every leaf, the tenderness in each movement. Ellie, can I ask you something? Of course, Mama. Do you ever feel like loving us means you're forgetting your first mama? Ellie paused, taking the question in with the deep thought it deserved. No, Mama. I think my first mama would be glad knowing I found a family who loves me. She taught me that the heart is big enough to hold love for many people. Maria felt tears sting her eyes. You're wise beyond your years. You and Papa taught me that wisdom comes from loving and being loved. Just then, Charles came jogging up from the house. Ellie, Maria. Come quick, we've got visitors. Ellie felt a flicker of fear and echo from her old life. Who is it? It's good news, Charles said with a grin. Come and see. Ellie and Maria followed him to the front gate where a small family stood, a man, a woman, and a little girl around 7. The child clung tightly to the woman's hand, her face smudged with dirt and her eyes wide with hunger and uncertainty. Mr. Charles, the man said, we heard you once took in a lost girl a few years back. We found this little one by the road, and we don't know what to do. Ellie stepped forward slowly, her heart recognizing the look in the girl's eyes, that same mix of fear and desperate hope she herself had once carried. What's your name? Ellie asked gently, kneeling to meet the girl at eye level. Sophia, the girl whispered. Sophia's a beautiful name, Ellie said with a warm smile. Are you hungry? Sophia nodded, and Ellie turned to Maria without hesitation. Mama, can we make her something to eat? Of course, sweetheart. While Maria prepared food, Ellie sat with Sophia on the porch steps, the very steps she had once swept clean so long ago. You know what, Sophia, I was once lost too. But these people helped me, and now I'm their daughter. Sophia's eyes grew wide. Really? Really? And if you want, you can stay here too. There's plenty of room and we always need help in the garden. Charles stepped up beside Ellie. You sure about this? Ellie looked at Sophia, seeing her past reflected so clearly in the child's face. Papa, do you remember what you told me the day I arrived? That hearts recognize each other. I remember. My heart recognizes Sophia's. She belongs here. Charles smiled, filled with pride at the kindness his daughter had grown into. Then I guess we better get another room ready. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Ellie took Sophia under her wing, teaching her everything she had once learned: how to care for the horses, how to tend the garden, how to make tortillas, and most importantly, how to trust in the love of a real family. "Why are you helping me?" Sophia asked one afternoon as they pulled weeds together. "Because someone helped me," Ellie replied simply, "and because that's how love works. It grows when you give it away." Sophia absorbed this with the seriousness of a child who had seen too much. "Do you think I could really have a family?" Sophia, Ellie said with certainty. "You already do. We're your family now." 1 week later, as Ellie was teaching Sophia how to read, she heard voices outside the house. She peeked through the window and saw another family arriving with another child, a boy, lost just like she once had been. Her heart swelled with something she couldn't name. "Papa," she called, running to Charles. "Can we help that boy too?" Charles looked at Maria, then back at Ellie. "You know what that means, right?" Ellie grinned. "It means we're going to be a really big family. It means more rooms, more gardens, more horses." Charles laughed. "It means I'll have more brothers and sisters." Ellie beamed. Maria stepped closer. "Ellie, are you sure you're ready to share all our attention?" Ellie's smile lit up her entire face. "Mama, love doesn't get smaller when you share it. It grows. You taught me that." And so Heaven Ranch became more than just a home for one family. It became a haven, a place where lost children could find love, safety, and a second chance. Ellie, now the oldest in a growing house full of siblings, had found her purpose. She hadn't just been saved by love, she had become a vessel for it, a guiding light for others. That night, as Ellie walked through the gardens she had helped create, she looked up at the desert sky, the stars glowing above like watchful guardians. She had once been a barefoot girl sweeping doorsteps in exchange for scraps. Now she was a young woman who knew the truth. A home isn't a building. It's the people who choose you and love you with all their hearts. The desert around her was still wide and wild, but within the walls of Heaven Ranch, something extraordinary had bloomed, a family bound not by blood, but by compassion, by kindness, and by the steadfast belief that everyone deserves a place to belong. Ellie had found her home, and now she was helping others find theirs. In the heart of the desert, an oasis of love had taken root, destined to grow for generations. All because one little girl chose to sweep a doorstep and found a family who would love her forever. The circle of love had begun with Ellie, but it would not end with her. It would stretch on, ever expanding like the stars scattered across the night sky, each one shining with its own light, yet all part of the same constellation of hope. Wow, what a journey, right? As the person who wrote this story, I have to tell you, Ellie's journey isn't just about a little girl finding a home. It's about something much deeper. It's about how love, real love, doesn't come with conditions. It's not about blood or paperwork. It's about the people who choose you, who see your worth, even when you feel invisible. That's what Maria and Charles did for Ellie. And in return, she brought their world back to life. This story means a lot to me because I believe we all in some way are just looking for a place where we feel safe, where we belong. Ellie didn't just survive, she built something beautiful out of her pain. She turned her scars into strength. And the most powerful part, she didn't keep that love to herself. She passed it on. That to me is the heart of the story. Love grows when you share it. There's so much humanity in this tale, compassion, healing, and the quiet power of kindness. It reminds us that sometimes the smallest act, like sweeping a porch, can change a life, or even many lives. So now I want to hear from you. What did Ellie's story make you feel? Did it remind you of someone in your life, or maybe your own journey? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I always read them, and I'd love to know what part of the story touched you most. And hey, if you believe that love makes a family just like I do, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for being here truly. Until next time, keep your hearts open and keep believing in the magic of chosen love.